Are you a high-performing parent, entrepreneur, or high achiever in pursuit of excellence? Welcome to The Nexus Podcast, a podcast custom tailored for families like ours, driven, affluent, and eager to lead extraordinary lives. From rockstar stay-at-home moms to high-producing CEOs, we choose to model success for everyone we are surrounded by. We prioritize health over sickness, embrace a vitalistic lifestyle, and seek to tap into the limitless potential that God has bestowed upon us. I'm Dr. Daniel Kimbley, your host, and on this podcast, we'll uncover the secrets to living a fulfilling and abundant life, where you and your loved ones can thrive physically, mentally, and spiritually. Together, we'll forge a path to greatness and unleash your God-given capabilities. Get ready to say yes to a life of true prosperity and well-being. This is The Nexus Podcast. Hey, what's up, Nexus fam? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This week, I'm talking all about the brain because, as you know, that's what came up in the office. So here's where I want to go. I want to talk a lot about posture. I want to talk about brain health because the two are linked in ways that you really can't imagine and probably don't know unless you've studied the brain a lot. And so what I want to do is just kind of lay down some knowledge on this idea that your brain health is a direct indicator of your posture. Another way to say that would be is your posture is a direct indicator of your brain function. So what that means is that if you have poor posture, then it's not a problem of tight muscles and relaxed muscles or weak muscles in the back. It's actually a problem of a weak brain. And I'm going to walk you through that this week on the episode. But the reason I thought it was important is because I've had pretty much every new client all last week and then this week as well who've come in, and one of the things that they're talking about is they want to improve their posture. They want to feel like they're sitting up taller. Most of the people that have come in this week have mentioned something to the effect of like, I've just had bad posture my whole life and I'm not sure why. And I really haven't done an episode on posture. And I thought it would be important to bring it to you because in our office, we talk about 4 Ps. We talk about posture, presence, productivity, and profit. And all 4 of those things are directly controlled by the frontal cortex of the brain. And so here's what happens, right? It's like every time we have a stress, we were designed to fight or run away. If you're going to fight something, you need to be in a protected posture. You need to be forward rolled shoulders, shoulders up in your ears. This is going to protect your spine. This is going to protect your body. This is why babies are born into a fetal position. This is why if someone's really, really feeling like they're in danger or threatened, they're going to curl themselves up into a ball into fetal position. It's a natural protective mechanism. So fight or flight, our stress hormones actually act on our frontal cortex of our brain to turn it off or weaken it. And what that does is it allows for a couple of things. It allows us to make decisions that are actually going to keep us safe and protected, not decisions that may bring us the most long-term benefit. The other thing that it's going to do is that frontal cortex is responsible for our postural muscles. So what we know about the front part of the brain and the prefrontal cortex is that its primary job is to turn things off, or the sciencey technical term would be inhibit things. And so when I say turn things off, what I mean is that we're born into fight or flight, but the primary response or the primary responsibility of a strong frontal cortex is to bring us out of that fight or flight, turn off the fight or flight, relax the flexor muscles, start to activate the extensor muscles so that our bodies can be in a more rest and digest state. And so this is why I say is a weak brain is going to show weak posture and vice versa. And the reason that I bring this up, the reason I think it's so important to talk about is because so many people come into my office and they're like, dude, I've been stretching my pecs and I've been strengthening my back and I've been doing PT and I've been doing foam rolling and I've been doing acupuncture and I've been doing massage and I go to see my therapist twice a week and still I feel stressed out, and still I feel like my shoulders are in my ears, and still I feel anxious, and still I feel like I'm not expressing my highest level soul purpose inside of my life. And the reality is that all those things come from a strong frontal cortex of the brain. So what we do inside of our office is when we get the joints of the spine moving, we can actually wake up the frontal cortex and start to strengthen it, and we see posture change as a result. And we see this in kids, we see this in adults, we see scoliosis go away, we see scoliosis get better, we see postural distortions get better naturally, not because we're fixing posture, but because we are experts in understanding exactly how the brain functions, exactly how the brain works, and we can do a very specific set of things through our adjustments to wake up the front part of the brain. And so I share this with you because I think it's an important conversation to understand that our front part of our brain is responsible for our postural muscles. Our muscles do not control themselves. They don't have a mind and a memory of their own. They are all controlled by the messages that the brain sends to the body to tell those muscles to either be relaxed or be tight in the first place. And so when we talk about tone in kiddos or low tone, which is all All of this stuff has to do with neurology, which is why we focus on the brain inside of our office. So let me illustrate a simple example of this. I'm having a conversation with one of my really good friends today while we're out surfing, and he's complaining of like, he's had just a ton of low back pain, a ton of stress inside of his life. And one of the things he's complaining about is like, dude, my calf on one side, it just feels like it's so tight. Can you give me more stretches? Can you give me more foam rolling to do? And I'm like, bro, here's the reality is like your brain is telling your muscles what to do. Like it's not a muscle problem. It's your brain telling your body what to do. And so as I walk him through this process, I'm explaining to him that a strong front part of the brain will inhibit or turn off flexion. Our calf muscles, plantar flexion is a flexion movement. And so if we see tight calves or tight hamstrings or tight hip flexors, it's usually a result of a weak front part of the brain. It's not just because the muscles magically got tight. It's because the brain is telling those muscles to be tight to create safety and protection inside of the system because the body is stuck in a fight or flight state. And I won't get into all those details of how that happens and how that works, but this is the idea, is that it works just like this. Imagine that you had a thermostat in your house. And in California, we'll talk about simply the winter time because there are a lot of people here, especially where we live, who don't have air conditioning at all, myself included in that. And I think it's amazing that we get to live in such an epic environment. Neither here nor there. Let's imagine that it's wintertime. And it's one of those cold March days where it's a little bit rainy and it's like 50 degrees outside. And we're like, man, we're turning up the thermostat to 70 degrees. So we turn on the thermostat to 70 degrees and the heater in the house kicks on and it starts to warm up the house. And it warms up the house until it hits 70 degrees and then the thermostat says, nope, no more, and it turns off the heater. So your brain works the exact same way. Your brain has these sensors to tell your body when to turn on flexion and when to turn off flexion. And so what happens is, if you could imagine that the thermostat gets weakened, the thermostat of our body gets weakened by stress hormones. And so if we have a weaker thermostat, then it gets a 70, and then it gets a 71, and then it gets a 72, and then it gets a 75, and the thermostat's not working properly and it doesn't turn off the response that it should, and the house starts to get hotter and hotter and hotter and it becomes uncomfortable. This is exactly what happens in your body. It's the same thing. It's that when we have a weak frontal cortex, our weak frontal cortex puts our body into this flexion posture, protective posture, fight or flight posture. And when we're stuck here in this fight or flight posture, it's very difficult for our muscles to do the jobs that they were designed to do. Our big muscles that put us here in the first place are not postural muscles. They're not designed to do long bouts of activity. So then when we talk about neck pain and shoulder pain and low back pain and hip flexor pain and whatever the pain is, a lot of times that pain is just secondary to a malfunctioning frontal cortex of the brain, because the frontal cortex has difficulty turning off the flexion response. This happens because the body gets stuck in fight or flight. And I won't go into all the details of exactly how the body gets stuck in fight or flight, but I think it's important to note, again, exactly what I said at the beginning, is that your body was actually designed to have good, strong posture. Good, strong posture is important for so many things. We work with lots of entrepreneurs, and I always tell people who are going into business deals and doing things like that, I'm like, just look around the room and look at people's posture. And you'll see that like people who have poor posture are going to make better decisions, because it's a representation of what's happening with the front part of the brain. The front part of the brain is responsible not only for our postural muscles, but it's responsible for our grit, for our willpower, for our decision making, for determining good versus bad, for determining right versus wrong. It's our emotional intelligence of the brain. It's responsible for our faith. It's responsible for our hope. It's responsible for our optimism. It's responsible for modulating the pain response in the first place. It's responsible for turning off and on these feelings of anxiousness or other emotional states. And like the frontal cortex, the reality is that the frontal cortex is primarily responsible for us being successful human beings. And so if posture is an issue, it would only stand to make sense that other things could be an issue as well, is because of what the frontal cortex is responsible for. So posture is a direct indicator of brain function. Posture is not a muscle issue. The muscles are secondary. The muscles are a symptom of what's happening in the brain. And we talk about this on every episode of the podcast, is that your body has the ability to heal itself. I'll say this again and again and again and again and again. If you fall down and scrape your knees, you don't have to wake up in the morning and tell your body to heal the scrape. It will do it on its own without you thinking about it. If you go to your doctor and you get a surgery, you're going to get stitches. Your body still has to heal the skin and bring the skin back together where the stitches are. The stitches hold the skin in place, but the body still heals itself. The stitches aren't doing the healing. And so I share this with you is because when you understand this principle of healing and you realize that all healing happens from a strong frontal cortex of the brain, this is what allows you to express a life full out. This is what allows you to get out of pain. This is why we see people have these massive changes inside of their lives as a result of the care we provide. Yes, because the front part of the brain is responsible for your posture, but it's also responsible for your presence, for your ability to be in the now, which we know has direct links to anxiety if we are not in the now. The frontal cortex is responsible for our productivity, so how much we get done, how focused we are, how good of decisions we can make. And lastly, the frontal cortex is responsible for a profit, so how much money we make. And profiting from life experiences, enjoying life full out, which is actually what we're all about in our office. So, my friends, address your brain to change your posture. It's the only way to do so. I love you and I appreciate you. I hope you got some value out of this episode, and I will come at you again next week. Peace.